Hello, how y'all been doing? My name is Hao. Today I'm going to recreate an app I saw online using Svelte, which is the Flexbox Froggy. So Flexbox Froggy is an app for front-end developers or anyone who loves CSS to learn CSS using this interactive game where you solve puzzles using CSS. There's multiple variants of this kind of game. So Flexbox Froggy is the one that teaches you how to use Flexbox, CSS Flexbox. There's this Grid Garden, which I will share the link down below the description as well. There's also a CSS Diner, which teaches how you use CSS selectors. So today I'm going to recreate this Flexbox Froggy. So as you can see here, there's 3 frogs or multiple frogs depending on the level over here. So I'm now at level 11. So 3 frogs and 3 lily pad. So the goal of this game is to use CSS to move the frog around so that all the frogs will stand on uh, each of the lily pad, respectively according to the color of the frog. So let me show you how you're gonna solve this puzzle. So the pawn is the blue background over here is using flex. So this whole blue container is a flex container, and I have 3 flex item, which is a 3 frogs. So what I'm gonna do here is that because because the lily pad is arranged vertically over here, so I'm gonna use flex direction column, and now it's rotated. So it's the flex direction is now vertical. And then the next thing I'm going to type in is justify content flex n. And as you see, once I type in the correct CSS where the frogs is positioned correctly, the next button is now lit up. So if I remove one of the character, it's now disabled because the position is not correct. So we're going to try to recreate this behavior itself alone. So we're going to, so probably not going to touch in how to create the levels and like the editor over here. We're just going to focus on a text box and 3 frogs and 3 lily pads. Okay, so here we go. So first thing first is we're going to go into a Svelte REPL. But here this is a very, the default startup. I'm going to clear this h1 tag, clear this. So we're going to have an empty script over here. So first thing first, I'm going to have 3 frogs over here. So I'm going to define a variable called game because the frog starts with green, yellow, and red. I'm going to type that out. Set yellow, oops, and red. Okay, and then over here I'm going to create a pawn. So class, probably I'm going to use ID because this is the ID selector, right? So ID pawn, and within the pawn, I'm gonna have the game itself. So hold on, game. So in the pawn, we're gonna have 3 frogs, right? So I'm gonna look through each game as frog, and over here I'm gonna have div class frog. Okay, I think this will do for now, right? So so now I have 1 flex container and 3 items, 3 frogs. To create the lily pad, I'm going to do the same thing as well. I'm going to have class lilies, and then probably with going to have also 3 lily pads, right? So this is the pad. I'm going to wrap all this around with a div so that I can style it together. Class container. Okay, so the first thing is the container is going to have some sort of color background blue. Sorry. Totally forgot. I need to wrap it with style, right? Then width would be let me probably 300 pixels for now. I'm just gonna have an arbitrary size, but that is what I'll go for now. Oh wait, why isn't there color? Let me figure this out. Inspect element. It's correct. Oh, okay. There's no such color as deep blue. I guess it should be dark blue instead. Sorry, my bad. Change it to dark blue. So we have the pawn right now, and then pawn itself, it's gonna be flex, display flex, and then let's see, pawn will be display flex. Okay, and then for frog, I'm gonna have each frog. I'm gonna set a fixed width of 20%. Because it feels like over here can fit 5 frogs, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm gonna have 20% of the height and the width over here. And background color of the frog will be red. Again, there's no color. Let me see what went wrong again. Pawn, frog. Okay, so the pawn itself has no size, right? So I'm gonna have set 100 pixels of width, 100 pixels of height, right? 2, okay. And after the pawn, I'm gonna do the same thing for the lilies as well. So not just the pawn, lilies will have that as well, and lilies will be going to have the same style over here as well. Probably we need to have both the pawns and the lily to be on overlap on each other. So I'm going to use position absolute, top 0, 0. And once you use position absolute, it will be absolute to a parent that has position, right? So look at here, it's absolute to the parent that has position. This element itself does not have, sorry, this is the one that we're going to have absolute, right? So its parent does not have position, body does not have position. Oh yeah, body has position of relative, then it's relative to the position, to the body. Alright, so what we're going to do here is going to add position relative to the container so that it will be the closest parent that is position. So it will relative to this container itself instead. Right, so I have the pawns and the lilies arranged absolute to the pawn. Now the next thing is, let me see. We are going to have, we're going to pass the colors in. Right, so I think I've shown this a few times. Probably I'll overlay a video over here so that you can take a look at how you can pass CSS variables into styles. So I'm going to just type it out and you can check that out if you want to. Color. the value of color will be the value of frog. Do the same thing as here as well. So the background color will be the bar color instead. Right, so I have 3 pads, green, yellow, and red. The frog is also here. So you can't see it because they look exactly the same, which is what I'm going to fix it right now. So for the frog, I'm gonna have some creativity over here to figure out how to style a frog. So I think first thing first is I'm gonna have I'm gonna use radial background to draw like a circle frog. Right. So radial gradient. So I can circle at center, and I'm going to use the color. Going to be 80% of the size, and then going to draw some black border, which is at 95%, and then beyond that would be transparent. So I'm going to have a transparent 100%. Right. I think that's about it. I can't see it again. Let me inspect and see what's going on wrong. Oh yeah. So the heads, the lilies are placed after the frog. That's why it's covering up the frog. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the pond, which is where the frog lives, to have a Z index of 1. Right, now you can see the frog, supposedly frog on top. So I have my circle at center, but apparently it's sort of cut out. That's because I didn't provide like the size of the circle, right? So by default, it tries to draw a circle that goes through the corner, 4 corners, right? So it's like the circle goes like this and pass through the corner and round like this, right? So I can specify the size. There's a few ways to specify the size. Actually, there's this radial gradient. There's a note that I written a while ago while listening to CSS podcast. You can check that out over here. Radial gradient. There's 4 different kind of size, which is closer side, farther sides, closest corner, and furthest corner, farthest corner. So what we're going to use here is the closest side. So it gets like the circle will pass through the closest side, irrelevant of whether the container itself is rectangle or square. Just go through the closest side. Right. So these are the different behaviors for different kind of sizes that you're going to pass in. So I'm going to use that closest side. Right, now I have a circle over here. So these 3 circles are frog. So for background, we can actually stack multiple radial gradients on top. Radial gradients are like images. So as you stack on top, the one that comes earlier, like at the beginning, will show up on top. So the thing I'm going to do here is that to add some life to it, I'm going to add 2 eyes. So gradient circle. This time around, I'm gonna have okay. Let's see, where should I put it? I'm gonna have put 50-50 first. White 0%, 3 pixel. So the size is gonna be 3 pixel. I'm gonna have like something black, 3 pixel, and then transparent from 5 pixels onward. I have a comma over here. So so how this reads is that it starts from white from the center, and then within 3 pixels of radius you get black, and then at a 5 pixel radius point from the center you get transparent, right? So I'm going to place, so this is at a 50-50 center position. I'm going to try to place somewhere a little bit on top, say maybe 30%, and then shift a bit on the left. Probably we'll get 50 minus 15, maybe 35. 5. So here I'm going to shift to 30 pixels on top, right? And then I'm going to copy this, and 50 plus 60, 15 plus 15 will be 65, so it will be on the right. We have 2 eyes, so I think that is suffice to call as a frog. Anyone can come up with a better frog. Comments down below show how you can draw a better frog with radial gradient. But I will do for it for now. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place the lilies, right? The answer to place the lilies at the right place would be this, right? So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to call it answer. And actually I'm going to use the answer to pass it as a style for the lilies, right? So this is the answer where if you type it correctly, you're going to have the lilies over here at the bottom left corner, just like this. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a text box, right? Text area bind value. So we're going to define the variable value. Okay. I'm going to wrap this whole thing again with a div so that we can make the text area and the game side by side. This time around, let me call class outer. I'm bad at naming, but that is what I'm gonna do with. So I'm gonna use display flex, and then I'm gonna have a gap of 10 pixels. Right, I think that is good enough for now. Okay, so next thing is we need to apply the value that's being typed out as style, so that we can use it to style the frogs, right? So you can't say, so over here we try to pass variables into CSS by passing like a CSS variables in it, right? But it's impossible to pass like a full-on CSS string, like the CSS text itself. Like I can't pass all this as a string into the style and use it directly, right? So what should we do? There's a few things. There's one idea I can think of is I can use Svelte head, and I'm gonna add a style tag over here, and I'm gonna have the value inside, right? So hopefully that works. Let's try that out. I'm gonna type pawn, then I'm gonna cheat a bit by copy this in. Apparently it doesn't work. Try to fix the doesn't work. Okay, let's see why. So as you can see here, the style is still curly brackets value. So it's actually using this itself instead of treating it as this text itself instead of treating it as an expression. Is this like a bug for Svelte? I wouldn't think so, because anything here should be treated as CSS, right? It's not gonna be very expression, because you can write things like this and it should treat it as CSS. So the curly bracket should treat it as like a block for the selector instead of being actually like expressions that you're gonna do, right? So if you can't do this, what can we do instead? Well, there's another workaround, is to use the HTML tag. So over here, so what this means is that we're gonna take this whole string as HTML and gonna shove it into the head, right? So this time around, let's try that again. Copy this answer again on. See, it works. And as you can see here, if we look at this style tag, style element over here, not zoom too much. Over here, if I change the text over here, you see it's going to update it on real time, right? It's reactive. So again, let's fix the answer. It's correct. Yay! So now the last thing we need to do is to show some success text somewhere when we type the correct answer, right? As soon as we get the frog to place at the right position, I'm going to show that success text, right? I think that will be enough for this video. Probably we'll do a part 2, never know. So I'm going to define a variable called success, equals false, and we need to have a function called CheckAnswer. This function will be called when we want to check whether the frog is correctly placed on top of the lily pads. So how do we check it? Probably we're gonna get all the div elements over here and compare the position. So I'm gonna define 2 variables. One is the frogs and the pads. And I'm gonna bind each of the div over here to this array. I'm gonna have frogs. Bind this. I'm gonna use index. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here for the pads as well. Bind this pad. So over here, I'm going to have a list of elements, each of the frogs div elements and the pads div element. So now in this function, to verify whether the frog is correctly placed on top of the pads, I'm going to look through the list. So I equals frogs length. So I'm gonna get to get a position, I'm gonna use the bounding climb rect. So left equal to frog left, frog top, frogs get bounding client rect. I'm gonna do the same thing as for the pads. So I'm going to compare the frog, the first frog with the first pad, second frog with the second pad. That's because I think for now we can safely assume that the first frog should place correctly at the first position. Second frog should be the yellow, should be placed correctly at the position. Third frog should be placed at this position, right? Unlikely that the frog position will jumble up, and I think there is some examples in the Flexbox Froggy game where you have multiple green pads, and it is possible that a green frog can place at different pads. Therefore, you can't compare directly like first frog should put at the first pad. Instead, you should compare like the green frog should all place at the green pads. But for now, I think this is good enough for this example itself. So to compare, gonna have like answer equals to false, or rather we set it true by default. And then if frog left is not equals to pad left, or frog top not equals to pad top, we are going to answer is false because they are not at the same position, and I'm gonna break. Yeah, so by default it's true. As long as we found one that is not true, then we're gonna set it to false, and we're not going to compare the rest of the pets or frogs position. And over here we're going to assign success equals to answer. When are we going to call this? Probably we can call it with values. If values is changed, I'm going to call check answer. Oh, sorry, value. If value change, we're going to check the answer. So every time when we change something, we'll call this expressions and call check answer. Then over here, I'm gonna show the here we're gonna see maybe outside of this show success. So it is true over here, and it should not be true. So let's console out the frogs and pets and see what's going wrong over here. Okay, so the check answer is being called when frogs and pets is empty array, and because it's empty, it doesn't loop through the frogs and pets, and the answer is set to true. Okay, so I think there's something wrong that we need to fix over here, but as soon as we type something, we have some frogs and pets, the success is set to false, which is correct, right? But if I think if I'm right, if I try to type something like flex direction column justify content flex. Okay, so right now if I type D, it should place in the right place and it should display true, but it does not. And now if I want to remove the D, it should undo the position and this should be true. So it should be false, but now it turns into true. Right? It seems like this success is always lagging behind one step of the actual value somehow when we are trying to type it. And the initial value of this is wrong as well because it's being computed when there's no frogs or pets. So why is this so? It's because this expression is being called right before we're gonna update the screen, right? That itself causes the initial value to be true of the success. That's because by that time we don't have frogs and pets yet, right? And because it's being evaluated every time right before it's being right before the DOM is being updated, the value itself is calculated at the state that right before the value style is being applied to the DOM, right? So that's why it's like one step behind. Once we change it, once we change it to something wrong, it doesn't. It still get the correct position and it doesn't reflects the thing that, but right after the style is being applied. Sorry, it's a bit mouthful. Try to explain my best. So I think once you see a better way of writing this, you probably will get to know why this doesn't work. This is being called right before it's being updated, right? So we want it to call right after it's being updated, right after the DOM is being updated. So one thing we can do here is we're going to call after update, and this should solve our problem. So after update, we need to import it from Svelte. And if we call this check answer, so I'm going to comment this out and call check answer over here. So initial is, I think it sounds promising, and type on flex direction, then justify content flex and as you can see it's reflected correctly at right when we make it correctly, right? So yeah, we have to use after update because we want it to be called right after it's being updated, right after the DOM is being updated. Then we check the position and then verify whether it's successful or not, right? So one thing that take note is that this function will be called for any of the state being changed, right? So of course it's after update, right? But if we have a checkbox over here that we check click and unclick, or something that some other states that we click to change and stuff, right after that DOM is being updated, this check answer will be called again. So this is like a give and take of using an after update, because it will be called for any updates that's being caused by the state changes. Is there a way that we still use value, only call this check answer when value is changed? There is a way. So let me comment this out. So the way it's like this, I'm going to call, whenever this change, we're going to call a function, right? Check answer, right? But check answer does not call immediately. We want to wait for a tick to happen. So what this tick is, that it's something that you need to import from Svelte. What tick is that this function will be resolved once that the DOM is updated. Right? So we can, anytime the value has changed, we call check answer, but we don't actually calculate the value of success immediately. We wait for the DOM to update. We wait for one tick, and once that DOM update happens, only then we calculate the answer. So let's see. It looks promising again. The initial value is correct, and as we type on flex direction column justify content flex en, take a look at here. As soon as I type D, put into a snap into the right position, and this value is correct, right? So yeah, another way of not doing after update would be using tick, so that you can ensure that the DOM is updated before we execute this block of code. So I think that's all that I want to show you guys for now. So what we have done so far is that we have a text box that we can type in CSS, and that CSS is inserted to the head, where we will have like a CSS value updated dynamically that targets the elements on the screen. And also we use CSS and also we use like CSS to style the frogs. We explore using radial gradients, and then whenever we type, we want to check whether the frog is being positioned in the right place. We use a bounding client rect, and then we learn about the nuances of using the reactive declaration, reactive statements, and explore the differences between after updates or tick or reactive statements. Right, so that's all for now. If you have any questions or any typo or anything that I can improve, please write a comment down below, so that I mean, not just me, everyone else can learn together, right? Okay, thank you. So thank you for staying till the end. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay notified with my next video, please hit the subscribe button down below. As always, stay safe and well. See you next time.